Hi everybody, I wanted to do a movie review today, a documentary review with you today, and I've got two that I'm going to do. The first one is Get Smart with Money, and the second one is How to Get Rich. Both are on Netflix at this time. I believe Get Smart with Money is still free. So this is an article, so I was kind of doing a little bit of research just to jog my mind because it's been about a month or two since I've seen Get Smart with Money. I just watched How to Get Rich, and I want to say first of all, my motivations are not so much based in consumerism or having more. Mine are based in security, financial stability, being able to support myself and my family. And I'm especially motivated because I have a child with a disability who's a young adult now and will need ongoing care even beyond my passing. So that is one of my big motivations for continuing to build generational wealth. And I thought both of these were really great, and I'm going to share some takeaways with you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this Buisness Insider. There's an article on the 6 things you can learn from Get Smart with Money documentary, and I'm going to go over those with you today and give my take on that. So number 1 was we must know how to save and invest. And sometimes when you're in debt, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, it can be hard because you don't see where there's any extra money coming in. And I think that's one reason I really like the Dave Ramsey baby steps, even though I don't agree with everything he says. If you begin to save that $1,000 or $500 for a single person, $1,000 for a couple, it teaches you the habits you need to save. It gets you in the hustle mode. And when you're in debt, sometimes you got to hustle, you got to earn a little more, you got to spend less. And if you read that book, it's like stop spending, sell everything but the kids, hustle, to make some more money. And not only would I say, oh, $1,000 isn't enough, but from someone having nothing to $1,000 and they get a flat tire or they need a tire, or all of a sudden they get in a little, have an emergency room bill for $500. Well, then that $1,000 is going to make a big difference in their life. It could mean not using a credit card. So I think, first of all, starting small is huge, but saving your money and making sure that you're saving it in interest-bearing accounts. So I will say that we save in index funds, which are the S&P 500, and they follow the S&P 500, and we, on average, make about 8% or more in the stock market each year. And most people with inflation, that's kind of keeping up with inflation. We also use CDs, which are paying 4 to 5% right now. And we are in a high yield money market, which is pretty paltry at less than 1%. However, we use a local bank because I'm more comfortable with it. I'm not yet with the online banking, and that's just a personal preference. I don't need to be convinced of that. But at any rate, we must know how to save and invest. At this point in our life, we've been completely debt-free with the mortgage for about a year, a little over a year now, 14 months. And we are making more money in interest than I was making in 2 weeks of work previously. So you have to know how to save and invest. Make sure that you're making money on your money. The next one is circumstances can change. And they can change for the better or the worse, and you can have some control over that. Sometimes you need to make more money, and a lot of times I have this hair that's just driving me nuts today. What I have seen a lot over the years is many people have come to me for financial advice. Most stop at giving me their numbers. People don't want to face it. And when I'm like, okay, I need your income and your expenses, I've only had one person, well, 2, really get down, 3, okay, 3 when I think about it, get down and get really deep with me on it. And so a lot of people just don't want to face that. And you can either get a job that improves your income, or you could lose your job, but you have these inflection points in your life where things change and you have a lot of control over that. But by ignoring it, there's a saying that, what doesn't change, or something like that. You have to consciously and intentionally, and that is my takeaway from both of these movies or shows, is that what doesn't change doesn't change. And you have to live your life intentionally. You have to be prepared for when the bad times come, and you've got to take an intentional step to moving forward. And that might mean working hard for a little while for your future self. I think that's another issue, is people don't think about their future self. They think about today. Number 3 is paying off debt can change your life. Oh man, think about your life if you didn't have to pay rent, you didn't have a car payment, you didn't have student loans, you didn't have credit card debt. Well, you can get there. A lot of people, one thing I didn't like in some of this is it's like, well, if you have this credit card and it's $10,000, if you pay the monthly payment, it's going to take you 60 years to pay it off. If you pay it, you pay double that, it's going to take you 10 years. That's great, but you're going to have to like get busy getting that way down. And most people can. If you look at your income over a period of time of years, so let's say for instance, your income is, I'm going to use Arkansas numbers, $30,000 a year. In 3 years, you make $90,000. Let's say you have $30,000 worth of income and you're like, I'll never get this paid off. $30,000 worth of debt. My debts are more than my income. Let's say you get a side hustle and you get those debts paid off in 3 years. Well, that's $10,000 a year. If you pick up a side hustle making an extra $5,000 and you cut $5,000 in expenses, those debts are going to be paid off. I know, I've done it. For us, it meant I had to take on a second job. My ex-husband had to take on a second job. I got divorced. I had to work more. My current husband, I've been with him for 12 years, my ex-husband for 20. And my current husband and I built a business, and that's the next one, is small business can help. So I had been a yoga teacher for 7 years. It was enough to pay the groceries, and I was taking care of the kids. And so I also did things like babysitting in the summer and cleaning people's house up until I started teaching yoga more. And it gave me $800 to $1,100 on average. I was making about $15,000 a year. I had to open a school. I wrote books. I taught workshops. As I became more talented at what I did, more experience, I had to expand my offerings to make more money. And I turned that into a small business. I taught school for years. I had a technical school. My now husband and I met when I was 40. And he did side work. If you've watched me before, he did roofs, decking, and mainly roof repairs and small roofs for people he knew. He grew up in a construction family, building fences, and we grew that into a business when we got married, or before we got married. I helped him, but we ended up getting married. And we've grown that into a very lucrative business, and we niched down to just doing roofs only, no more decks or fences. And that has taken off for us because over time it has built and built and built. So we were low income earners. We were making a combined income of about $37,000, 33 to 37, it varied when we met. And over the years, we've built that up. It can change your life. And a lot of people are always like, what can I do? What can I do? If you're like watching this and you have the ability to clean gutters, do you know how many people we know that need someone to clean their gutters? We see this a lot being in the roofing business. Mowing lawns, cleaning houses, babysitting, taking care of elderly people, walking dogs. There are so many things that aren't glamorous that people can do. There are so many people who can't do home repairs for themselves or run errands. You don't have to create something crazy. So starting a small business is a great way. Learning about business is a great way. I took classes at the local college, and I just searched online and studied the small business administration to learn about that. And there's really no excuse with YouTube today that you can't learn anything. So for us, paying off our debts, consumer debts first, and then our house at last was the last thing we paid off, and living below our means, which we're going to talk about next. Number 5 was keeping up with the Joneses, or the hedonic treadmill. That propelled us. Once those debts were paid off and we started making more money, these inflection points would happen. We were able to increase our savings and invest more. Number 5 is keeping up with the Joneses, or getting off the hedonic treadmill. Think of a treadmill. When you are constantly trying to keep up with people. And sometimes I feel this. I was at the grocery store yesterday and I'm looking at all these cars around me, and I'm looking at my car, and my car's nice, but sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to have an SUV again, which we have a CRV, but I don't drive it. It's kind of like a Mack truck. It's an older model, and it's kind of been worn because my husband throws a ladder back in the back of it, a collapsible ladder for roofing. So anyway, it's a little bit worn out. But I can see where like I could go buy a new car, but then I start thinking about the cost of insurance. How would that affect our savings? I don't need it. It is a pull, even on the best of us, to sometimes keep up with the Joneses. I would say one of my big things in watching Get Smart with Money and How to Get Rich, which I'll talk about later, is that it broke my heart, the culture of buy. I've got to have new sneakers. I've got to have new jeans. And I don't just need one pair of jeans. I need 10 pair of jeans. Yeah, we all need clothes sometimes. But if we are shopping and we are not paying our bills and we're not investing and we're not saving and we're buying things we don't need, we have a problem. And keeping up with the Joneses is, all the people you see in Gucci, and they have to have, like, let's say you're in debt and you go out and buy a $200 pair of Ray-Bans, or you're going and getting your nails done all the time, in fake nails. It's not that you should never get those things. It's that you have to learn to budget for certain things. And if it's not in the budget, you don't get it. In understanding, I saw this in a post in Choose FI the other day. One of the biggest things for people who are getting financially independent is understanding the science and psychology behind happiness. The truth is, you're not going to be any happier with the brand new BMW for very long. Most people come back to borderline. So that BMW feels really good while you first get it, right? You're like, I am killing it. I feel good about myself and that new house. But over a period of time, you get used to that, and people go back to their same level of happiness once their basic needs are met and they have enough to have a few extras, okay? It used to be about 70,000. I think it's up to 77 now, is like where people kind of fall off. There is some research that shows that people who have financial security and make a little bit more are happier, but that makes sense. Once you learn how to have, a financial security, you're going to feel less stressed and less worried, and you can do it. My husband and I were not high earners until just a couple of years ago, and we are 65 and 52. So it took a long time, and we were on this path. Now, I was on the debt-free path before. I'm not going to get into bashing anybody or anything like that, but I was married in a really bad situation. It wasn't financially, luckily for me, I was able to get out of that mess. But at 41, I was really on this path. And when I met my now husband, he was willing to get on this path with me, and we grew it together. In 10 years, most people can go from broke to a millionaire, and even on a lower income, if they're willing to look at how to make more, doesn't have to mean huge amounts, and how to spend less, and how to get out of debt, and how to save and invest. But you got to quit trying to keep up with the Joneses. Stuff will not make you happy beyond your basic needs. Taking a $1,500 vacation for the weekend may give you just as much happiness as taking a $3,000 vacation for 5 days, or, so you have to just start to realize that your happiness is not grounded in stuff. Number 6 is, this is something that I don't know that I agree with. It says you may have to move to become financially independent. Yeah, if you live in the middle of nowhere and you have no prospects of building a business and you don't have any skills to do that, you might have to move. But you don't necessarily have to move far away. One thing I've noticed in a lot of these movies, and they're out in California, or they're in Colorado, or they're in high cost of living places, these people who are quite a bit younger than me are making far more than my husband and I make, and they're in terrible debt. And it's just kind of really sad to me that the culture is this way. If you live in a low cost of living area, maybe you move to the closest city or community that you can get a better job. Maybe you find remote work. If you move, though, to a place that has a higher cost of living, making more might negate the move. So being mindful of that, because once you lose resources, like my daughter and her husband are about to have a baby, and my son and his partner are about to have a baby. My son and his partner, they live in Colorado. They don't have me for babysitting. They don't have that. They have her family for family resources, but her family works full time and isn't available for all of that. So my daughter, I'll be able to help some with babysitting, doing things for her. Once you leave, you're not going to have those family. Make sure that you're not giving up resources that you already have. Learn how to cut expenses. And some of those things would be like cutting out the fancy gym and getting a cheaper gym, working out at home, hiking, learning how to live on less. Maybe you downsize your house and your car. Maybe you move closer to family to have some help with babysitting. You know, I kind of got raked over the coals when I was interviewed on Bigger Pockets by a few people in the comments section of, well, she had babysitting. So when I got divorced, my kids were like, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, my kids were like 12, 13, 14, and I think 17, almost 18. So yes, they could stay by themselves some. And my parents helped watch the younger ones some. But I couldn't leave them for long periods of time. I consciously had my parents move back here when I had children. And so that resource of having help with my kids and rides and all of that, that was part of my plan. So we shouldn't like say to people, well, that's, you have help, so therefore it's not the same for you. We all have different advantages and disadvantages, and we have to figure out, like, is moving going to be worth it? What are we going to give up? Are we going to have higher rent, higher cost of living, higher taxes? So think about those things when you think about moving. Yes, you may have to move, but make sure it's going to be worth it to you before you do that. There's a huge movement now of older people moving like to Mexico and to Portugal and places like that in order to live off their Social Security and have more, because it's so much cheaper to live there. So these are just things to think about. But overall, get smart with money. I highly recommend. I think you could see yourself. There are different ages and people making different money in there of ways to do it, and also ways to see how you can make changes in your life. You must empower yourself if you want to get ahead. Thank you so much for being here. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Bye-bye.